Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual tech talk. My name's Casey. I am the Digital Services Coordinator for Martin County Libraries. And basically what that means is I get to talk about new and emerging technology and all kinds of innovation with people like yourself and let you know all the different ways that the library can give you access to these new and emerging technologies. I'm joined today by my colleague, Brianna. Brianna, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brianna. I work at Morgade.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, we just wanted to talk to you today about augmented and virtual reality. So let's get started. All right, so just to give you an idea about how today's session is going to go, we're going to start by defining augmented reality and virtual reality. And from this point forward, you might hear me refer to them as AR for augmented reality and VR for virtual reality, but just so you know what those stand for. Then we're going to spend some time doing a deep dive and talking about how AR and VR are used today. And we'll also talk about how we think it'll be used in the future going forward. But before we get too deep into it, I did just want to show you a real great video that we found on the web from one of my favorite resources for learning about technology. It's called gcflearnfree.org. So I'm just going to turn off my microphone and play this short little video for us to talk about the difference between the two.
These days, we spend a lot of time looking at screens. Computers, smartphones, and televisions are a big part of our lives. They're how we get most of our news, use social media, watch movies, and more. Virtual reality and augmented reality are two technologies changing the way we use screens, creating new and exciting interactive experiences. Virtual reality, also known as VR, uses a headset with a built-in screen that displays a virtual environment for you to explore. These headsets use a technology called head tracking, which allows you to look around the environment by simply moving your head. Augmented reality, or AR, is a bit different. Instead of transporting you to a virtual world, it takes digital images and layers them on the real world around you. This is done through the use of either a clear visor or a smartphone. So with VR, you could explore a world full of dinosaurs. But with AR, you could see those dinosaurs moving through the world around you. Both of these technologies are growing at a rapid pace and being implemented in a variety of different ways. Surgeons are using VR to practice highly technical surgeries before operating. Businesses are using them to give consumers virtual tours of products and locations. There are even apps that can use your smartphone's camera to scan and translate a foreign language in real time. As they continue to grow, VR and AR have the potential to greatly change almost every industry. You'll want to keep an eye on them to see how they might soon affect your job and potentially your everyday life.
Goodwill Community Foundation.
Okay, so that is basically a lot of what we're going to be talking about in today's session. That's just a real quick overview of everything that we're going to cover, and we're going to get into more detail right now.
Creating opportunities for better.
All right, so we're going to start with virtual reality. What is virtual reality? There's a lot of definitions out on the web, and this one is from Oxford Languages, and it's a little bit overwhelming, so I'm going to break it into three parts for us. So if we read the definition, let's start with the computer-generated simulation of a three-dimensional image or environment. Okay, so it's basically a video or a drawing or a graphic that's in 3D. So think of like a movie. So computer-generated simulation of a three-dimensional image or environment. Next part, that can be interacted with in a seemingly real or physical way by a person. So you're in this reality and you're navigating through it. You might be standing in a virtual world or a digital world, and you reach out and there's an apple on the tree, and you can actually pull that apple off the tree in a virtual reality setting. And to do that, we'll look at the third part of the definition, where a person uses special electronic equipment, such as a helmet with a screen inside or gloves fitted with sensors. So kind of like we saw in that quick little video, we have a helmet on that gives us that world that we're standing in, that virtual world. And we might have a pair of gloves that see our hands reaching out into the air, and then knowing that we could pull down that apple, that fake apple from that fake tree. That is virtual reality. So kind of a complicated definition, but we'll get into it in a little bit more detail with some visuals. So you have here a couple different examples of different types of headsets. On the left, you see a woman wearing a VR headset. And the reason I like to show these pictures is because VR is also known as a black box experience. That's another way of saying it. And the reason it's called that is because it totally blocks out your physical reality and offers a completely immersive experience to users. So in the pictures, it completely covers a person's eyes and their field of vision, blocking out, like that guy sitting in the chair, the girl standing with the VR headset on, she can't see him. She's in some sort of industrial game, it looks like, from the TV beyond her, but she's completely immersed in a totally simulated environment in a virtual world. I like to describe virtual reality as kind of like being inside of a movie set, because that's the kind of experience that VR offers. And that movie set could be developed from a camera that someone has gone and recorded someplace. Like if I went scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef and brought a camera with me, someone could create a VR experience out of that footage, or traveling through Paris or riding on a roller coaster. So it just puts you in the middle of something that is not actually real. And it works with a camera, but it could also be a completely simulated experience. Like if I wanted to travel to ancient Greece, or the surface of Mars, or even like an animated setting, like in a Pixar movie, or my favorite Disney cartoon. All of those places are places you can travel to with virtual reality. All right, so hopefully that gives you just kind of a big picture. Now we're going to take a step back and talk about kind of the technology and how it works. Maybe this ViewMaster looks a little bit familiar to some of you, but basically you might have used these as a kid, and it takes your eyes and the two different images that your left eye sees and your right eye sees, and our brains, the complicated, amazing things that they are, they combine those images to give us one picture. And virtual reality works very similar in that there's two lenses, one lens in front of each eye, and then your brain will combine that picture to give you a very realistic scenario or a very realistic experience. So this is kind of early days, like 1838, that sort of science, the medical science was discovered or identified, I'll say. And then the stereoscope concept with the ViewMaster used in later days. I know I had one of these as a child. Very fun. And VR has progressed quite a bit, as you can imagine. And we're going to talk about the full spectrum of virtual reality, because it could be something very simple, or it could be something like you see in this photograph here. Very complex, very immersive. This person is in a flight simulator. So he is, to him, it feels like he's actually in the cockpit of an airplane. He's got all the controls that a real cockpit might have, and he's wearing the headset. We can see on the flat screen that he doesn't see it. He actually sees that kind of surrounding his view. But we can kind of see in the flat screen that he's looking out, and it looks like he's in the cockpit and flying a jet or some sort of aircraft. I'm not very good at that stuff, sorry. All right, so that is kind of the high end, but let's go ahead and talk about the different types of VR rigs or VR hardware that you might come across in the future or even today. On the more expensive end of the spectrum is a full VR headset and with a full VR rig. You'll see in the picture here, this is actually the PlayStation VR, PlayStation 4 with a VR headset. This was at the Cummings Library, but we actually now have this piece of gaming equipment at the Robert Morgade Library where Brianna works. So Brianna's used this before. But you can see he's got the headset, and if you look very closely, you can see he's got a wire that's going from kind of behind, on the back of his head down on the floor, and that wire is connected to the PlayStation gaming console that he's using. In order to get the highest quality experience, it usually requires some sort of wired connection because the response time is faster when you're wired in rather than being wireless. And then what you're wired into, you're wearing this headset that's connected via wire. What you're wired into usually requires a very high powered computer or gaming console because it needs to have a lot of energy and a lot of power. Kind of think of it like a car with horsepower. Needs to have a lot of that oomph to have all those high quality graphics really immerse you into that virtual experience. So it can get very expensive. As you'll see here, we've got the cost for some of these experiences, and it could be anywhere from $400 to $1,000 plus. And when I say $1,000 plus, we're talking $2,000 to $3,000 as well. So it does require a lot of a really great high quality experience does require a bit of money, but it is truly an amazing experience. And in this case, the game he's playing, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see he's got like the pink and red controllers in his hands. And if you look closely at the TV, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's two hands in this picture here. He's playing a game called Job Simulator, which basically puts you in the driver's seat of a couple different career choices. One is a mechanic, I think. The other one that I've done a little bit is a cook at like a diner. And so you kind of cook and flip eggs and, you know, order up and you ring the bell, and those controllers are motion censored so that it can see when he's actually moving. And those white hands in the picture on the bottom of the TV will move according to how he moves the controllers. So if you're interested in trying that out yourself, you should definitely stop into the Robert Morgade Library and give it a shot. All right, but a lot of us don't have thousands of dollars to spend on a high-end virtual reality experience. And we may want something a little more simpler that requires a little less hardware. And that's really the direction that a lot of companies have gone in recent years. To provide a more standalone experience. So instead of needing a computer and an expensive headset and multiple controllers that's all connected via wire, a lot of companies have started developing these standalone VR headsets that offer a more mobile experience. So you're not tethered by wire, which could be good or bad. Again, like your mileage may vary, but I tend to like these because when I do VR, when I've done it in the past, I like, for safety purposes, I like to sit in a chair, like my office swivel chair. And then this, I can swivel around in my chair, look all around me, all directions, without getting tangled in that wire. And I also don't need a fancy computer to do it as well. So a couple different headsets, these standalone VR headsets that are out on the market today. One is called Oculus Quest, and the Oculus Quest 2 has been out for about a year now, actually. Lenovo Mirage Solo and HTC Vive Focus Plus are a couple other options as well. Just a quick note on Oculus. You might have heard that name before, but if you haven't, it's important to note that Facebook is its parent company. We all know that Facebook is huge in the tech world. They have a lot of Market penetration, a lot of people have Facebook accounts, and they've, in the last 5 to 10 years, I'll say they've heavily invested in virtual reality hardware and virtual reality technology because they really see that as, a futuristic or maybe not so futuristic area to pursue. So interesting to see what developments come about. We'll talk a little bit more about that and what other companies are involved. These headsets will cost anywhere between, I want to say $300 and $1,000. I believe the HTC Vive Focus Plus is more on the higher end, and that Oculus Quest 2, I think that's about $300. So again, a variety of prices depending on what you want. Some games are only for certain headsets, and so people might be attracted to this headset over another because of a particular game. And I should say also that these standalone headsets, again, they don't require a computer. Oftentimes they have like an app store built into it. So just like your phone has apps that you would just go to the app store and download and then be able to use on your phone, that's how these headsets work as well. So it's basically a store in the headset that you would shop, and then you'd install games or movies or videos to watch right directly from your headset. All right, a couple more slides and then we'll take a break for questions. But just as a reminder, you can throw those questions into the chat box. Okay, so at the furthest, at the lower end of the price spectrum, and I'll say the quality spectrum too, are our BYOD VR headsets. How's that for acronyms or alphabet soup? BYOD also stands for bring your own device, which means you would bring your own device to make something into a VR headset. And in most of our cases, our smartphones will work in that scenario. So you'll see here, the picture on the bottom right is just basically a cardboard box with some Velcro and a couple lenses built in and a little spot for your nose. But basically you'll see someone's put their smartphone in here, and then when they kind of fold this up and click it on the Velcro at the top here, all of a sudden now they're looking at their smartphone through those lenses for a virtual reality experience. Same thing with the one above. You can't see the smartphone, but it would be tucked in the front. The cardboard is almost like a one-time use sort of thing, or I'll say maybe 4 or 5-time use, but this is a little more sturdy here. You'll see it's got this foam area to kind of protect your face a little bit and not be so pokey, and a head strap that looks a little bit more comfortable too. But these BYOD VR headsets are super fun if you just want to kind of dip your toe in the water of virtual reality. I will say your smartphone does need to have a gyroscope built into it. And a gyroscope, if you've ever used like the compass app on your phone and you tilt it around and it can kind of see that tilting, that's exactly the same technology that you need to use your phone for virtual reality. It needs to see when you look down, when you look up, when you look to the right, when you look to the left, and that way it knows to change the picture of what you're watching. A good way to test before investing in anything to see if your phone has a built-in gyroscope, and I'll say most phones do, all iPhones do, and I don't have a percentage, but most newer Android phones do as well. But if you're not sure, go to your browser on your phone, so Chrome or Safari, and visit vrtest.ninja, and it'll run a little test on your phone to see if you have that built-in gyroscope. I just learned about that website today, so I was pretty excited to be able to share that with you. And then if you do have it on your phone and you end up getting one of these BYOD headsets, you can just search YouTube. YouTube has 360 videos, which basically means it's cameras that no matter which direction you look, 360 degrees, up, down, left, right, behind you, there's images everywhere. So you could go scuba diving, or National Geographic has some incredible footage that you could simply go to YouTube on your phone. And then when you pop your phone into these headsets, you have this really fun experience for not too much money. Google Cardboard is one of the brands that sells it. They had an app specifically for that. And then Merge VR is the one up top, that picture. They have the more of the comfortable, like use again sort of headsets. But those cost, the Cardboard will cost like $10 if you walked into Best Buy to buy it. And the Merge will say maybe between 30 and 50, depending on a few different features that you might be interested in. But hopefully that gives you an idea about just the different ways you can experience virtual reality from the hardware. But let's talk about what it does to you, like what it does in your mind. We talked about that ViewMaster before, the childhood toy, and how it had individual lenses here, one for each eye, and how our brain kind of combines those two images, amazing, to have us see every day. So that's exactly what virtual reality does, only we put on a headset to block out our current reality, but it works with so many more of our senses, not just our sight. When you experience VR, yes, you're going to be immersed in a visual world, which is of huge sense for our brain to take in all of that information. But there's probably also going to be some sound in there as well. So you might have a narrator talking to me. You might have someone you're having a conversation with speaking to you. So you've got sounds. You might be riding a roller coaster and you might be seeing it kind of go up the hill. And then as you ride that steep curve down, you might hear people scream. You might be screaming yourself. So that sort of sounds will also kind of help with that immersion, that complete reality difference. The other thing that's really big these days in virtual reality is touch. And there's a phrase called haptic feedback that if you haven't heard of that before, haptic feedback is basically when you touch something, it gives you a little bit of response. So those of you that have an iPhone, I just picked up my iPhone if you heard that buzz. Those of you that have an iPhone, when you press on it, there's actually, you kind of feel something behind there, but it's just a piece of glass. And that little bit of fake feedback, that it's all replicated. It's not actually real. So my iPhone is just a complete sheet of glass. But when I touch it in certain places, I get like a response from it. But that's all completely fake, and that's called haptic feedback. And that's another trick that virtual reality uses to really get you immersed in an environment. And this picture on the bottom left here is just a great example of that. That's actually myself and a couple coworkers, one from here at the library. And then the gentleman on the right is from the Broward County Libraries. And we went up to Orlando and did basically a immersive Star Wars VR experience that you walk through. And we talked about the headsets that you can see on our heads, but we also wore these vests. And if you're familiar with Star Wars, you know that there's like stormtroopers who carry guns and they shoot you, and you're trying to save the world or some universe somewhere in a galaxy far, far away. But when they shoot you, the vests actually will buzz. And so it'll actually feel like you're taking a hit. And that's essentially haptic feedback, in that it's fake, but your body does feel something. And so that's just another way that it, again, the way the brain works is very complicated, but it's all very amazing. So just something to be aware of and start to be on the lookout for as you delve into some of this stuff. Another way that VR can trick you, this will really depend on where you are and what kind of experience you have, but smell. And then taste is another one that some more futuristic experiences offer, which is really interesting. If you ever get a chance to do some sort of like walk through immersive VR experience, then definitely check that out. But the end result is that your brain believes it's real and your body responds accordingly. So all of those things trick your senses into believing that you're not actually just sitting at home on the couch or in a chair, but that you're actually riding a roller coaster or shooting stormtroopers or, traveling to ancient Greece. All of those things are a sight to be seen, I'll say. All right. So just throw those questions into the chat box. I think this is my last slide, if not my second to last slide, before we take a pause on VR. Okay, so how is VR used today? We talked about what it does, how it works, how you can use it, what type of hardware you can use, but how are people actually using it? Obviously, some of the examples I've used so far have to do with gaming or entertainment. I've been reading up on VR fitness lately, which is a really interesting concept. But a big barrier for that is when you sweat and you're wearing that headset, it fogs up the goggles. So that'll be interesting to see what that looks like going forward. But flight simulators, which is also at the Robert Morgade Library, racing simulators, travel, skydiving, adventure travel, all those sorts of things are very popular. It's also used in manufacturing. If someone wants to test something in theory, they can create it in a VR environment and then do the testing in that environment as well. We'll talk about manufacturing a little bit more with AR, but it is definitely an emerging area for VR. Marketing and sales. One of the big things I've noticed in the last year and a half, especially with COVID, is real estate viewings. And you might have seen this too on Zillow or some of the big real estate websites, but realtors aren't able to bring people to houses to show them and walk them through. And so what they've done is they've gone through with a camera and then they put these videos on their websites or on Zillow, and people can actually simulate what it would be like to walk through that house or that space. And so it's been a really big, it's been a really big growth area in the last year or two, I'll say 2 years. So definitely something that you might have seen already or experienced already. Another really big area that's definitely been behind the scenes if you're not really in these fields, but education and training, particularly like medical or surgical, and defense, like we talked about, like we saw with the pilot simulation. Instead of operating on real people, we can create a virtual body, and surgeons can train for a surgery or an operation through a simulated environment. So rather than, operating on someone for the first time, they can have gone through several simulations beforehand and really be prepared. And they also use this for empathy or sensitivity training too. A lot of corporations are starting to use VR for more of the empathy and sensitivity training for real life simulations and encountering people and really teaching yourself how to respond in a way that's empathetic. And along the same lines is what we would think of as immersion therapy. And I just think of it as like a face your fear sort of thing. So if I'm afraid of heights and I've been working on it with a trained therapist, of course, that therapist might recommend that I wear a VR headset, and that way I can go for a walk across a bridge and I could practice my breathing, all the things we had talked about in therapy as coping mechanisms. You can actually practice using those so that you've developed that muscle memory. And then when you find yourself in those real life scenarios, you've got that muscle memory built in. So that's in my mind, like a beautiful way of using technology to really help people overcome fears and help them live in the world today as healthy individuals. One of the ways the library is using VR is we're actually bringing headsets to some local assisted living facilities because there's also been research showing that adults with dementia or Alzheimer's, more of memory care patients or residents locally. If you put them in a virtual environment of, say, their hometown or standing in front of the house they grew up in or the church they got married in, that it actually like reconnects some of the brain waves, and that they actually like will remember more and speak more. And it's just really kind of amazing to watch. But the library just started doing that a couple months ago. And so it's one of the ways we like to bring technology out into the community, but also it's just been a beautiful way to see kind of the potential for technology and what it means for quality of life. Okay, and this, I'm going to make this my last slide, whether it is or not, but just kind of the drawbacks of VR. Some of it is a little bit obvious. Some people have been known to experience nausea or dizziness when using VR, a lot of times for the first time. I will say everybody's a little bit different. And from my experience, when I do low end VR, I do get a little dizzy or a little nauseous, but when I use like the higher end stuff, like I'm perfectly fine and just don't even know. So definitely give it a try, but if you're feeling dizzy, you just take the headset off. And that's why I also like to do VR seated. And I recommend everybody do it seated to start. Just like any other form of entertainment, oftentimes there's addiction. Physical injury could be an issue if you're standing too close to a wall and you're fighting bad guys, or raise your hand to reach for something above you and there's a ceiling fan there. So a lot of these VR headsets will come with, you'll designate a space in the virtual world. And if you go outside of that space, it'll like flash red at you and stop working. So they've definitely built in some stuff to prevent any physical injuries happening. But again, it's not perfect. The big thing that I like to talk about with most of our classes is privacy. So I mentioned Facebook, who isn't exactly known for being for prioritizing our privacy and not selling our data, or not giving away our data or using our data to collect even more data. But these tech companies, they're starting to see that now that we're wearing headsets and they're listening to the conversation. So if we're chatting together and playing a game together in a VR environment, all that stuff is being recorded and collected. Directions that I move my hands, the number of times that I blink. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal to collect that information, but I still just like to bring it up in case people aren't aware that's out there. So that is a little bit on VR. I'm going to talk about how you can use it at the library, but I wanted to pause and see if there were any questions in the chat while I flip to the next slide. Brianna.
Yes, two questions now. So the first one is, do you think it is inevitable that in the future the bulky headsets will look as outdated as the phones on Seinfeld?
Sorry, I had myself muted to take a sip of water, but I almost spit my water out. That's a great question. Yes, absolutely. And that's a good segue into our next topic, AR. But yeah, I think virtual reality, it's already gotten slimmer and more streamlined as technology shrinks, like it has a tendency to. Great question and a great visual too. Yeah, Seinfeld. Thank you.
And then the second one is, are the VR experiences on YouTube free if you buy a mid-price headset to use with your phone?
Yeah, great question. They are. I actually have a couple pulled up. At the end of class, I'll show you YouTube, because you can just search 360 video on YouTube and there's a filter that then it'll only show you 360 video results. And I would definitely start out with National Geographic. Everything on YouTube is free. Of course, you'll probably watch ads. They'll get you one way or another, but definitely worth exploring with your phone or even with your computer. So the way 360 videos work is if I was just watching on my desktop, and I was looking at a couple videos earlier today, you just drag your mouse around, and that instead of moving your neck up, down, and left and right, you just use your mouse to drag the video around, and that'll help you watch it that way too. I'll do a little demo of that at the end. Good questions. Any other questions?
That was the last of them. And
Okay.
then one way I thought of comparing it, like using your mouse to move around the video on YouTube, it's just like using Google Maps when you explore and look around there.
Yes, yes. In fact, you can go into Google Maps in VR as well. If you pop it into your phone with one of these headsets. At least you could last time I checked. So just to let you know of a couple ways, if this has piqued your interest a little bit, a couple ways you can check out VR. One of them, you can literally check it out with your library card. This purple Merge VR headset that we talked about earlier. I'll be honest, my phone doesn't fit in it. I have one of those really big iPhones from a few years ago, and it doesn't quite fit into this slot right here. But you know what? If you want to check one out, it's not going to cost you anything. This is part of our take-home tech collection. So you could check out one of these purple headsets and try it out yourself. The other thing I've mentioned already a couple times is you can use the PlayStation VR headset at the Robert Morgade Library. And then we also sometimes offer in-person, now that we're starting in-person events again, we offer in-person events at some of our branches too. So if you kind of want a little bit of someone there to kind of help you along the way, and we do have a couple coming up that you might be interested in. In a couple weeks, we have a program called DIY Google Cardboard. Well, we'll have a Google Cardboard headset for you to put together and try and use and put your smartphone in it, assuming you have a gyroscope like we talked about. So that's coming up. We'd love for you to join us. We still have a few spots open. And yeah, it's going to be super fun at the Hope Sound Library. And the other thing, and then you'll get to take home that Google Cardboard headset too. I don't know if you remember, but those are definitely kind of one-time use only. Like I don't wear a ton of makeup, but you know, even if I use it once, you can see my makeup on where your forehead is and your nose goes. So it's yours to keep once you use it. But another option for you to try out is the Robert Morgade Library has a program called Discover Gaming, where they pull out all of their gaming equipment, including their VR headset to go with the PlayStation 4. And that is coming up on Saturday, August 21st. And you can drop by anytime between 3 and 5 p.m. That's a great family-friendly program too. Like I think Brianna was just sharing with me, they did it a week or two ago in July. And, you know, someone brought their kids and grandkids just to play and kind of see what their kids talked about all the time. And another family came and like tried out all the different gaming consoles to see which ones they might want to ask for Christmas. So just a really fun, easy way to try something new with, you know, library staff there to help answer any questions. So that one you don't need to register for, but the one at Hope Sound you do. So just a heads up about that. Okay, and here's my question slide, but we already did questions. Any other questions before I move on? All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about, let's switch from virtual reality to augmented reality. And they are two very different types of technology, even though they're often lumped together. Remember, we talked about VR being totally immersion based. It blocks out your field of vision so that you can't see your current reality. All you see is a digital or simulated or virtual reality. Augmented reality is the opposite in that you see your reality and then there's a layer of data or information put on top of it. And we're going to talk about a few examples that you might be familiar with. So like I just said, AR is the real world with an added layer of virtual content, which actually makes it quite complicated. So AR needs the ability to see the real world while also having it respond. So there's a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning that you'll see as we kind of go through these examples as well that requires with AR, which is why it's a little behind VR, just because of the complexity. Okay, so my favorite example of augmented reality is the first down line on a football field. So I don't know if there's any football fans out there, but if you've ever watched a football game in the last 20, 25 years, there's probably been a yellow line digitally imposed on your TV screen to let you know where the football needs to get past to get a first down. This is groundbreaking technology and so fascinating. In fact, when this was invented in 1998, the team that invented the yellow line won an Emmy because it actually is like this engineering phenomena of how complicated it is to put that yellow line on the field in a way that like his arm is actually in front of the yellow line. So this yellow line is fake and everything else in this picture is real. And that's just something you might have seen in the past. If you're a baseball fan, you might have seen the strike zone superimposed on your TV screen. That's not there in reality. That's a layer of data or a layer of information. There was a hockey puck that would like have the blue ring around it. If you watch soccer or European football, they have advertising along the outside billboards and they change. And that advertising is actually digitally superimposed as well on your TV screen. It doesn't really change in real life. So the sports world is definitely a great place to point to when looking at familiar places you might have seen AR in action. But just like watching football, we actually, those are cameras that then transmit that image with extra information to your TV. There is some hardware involved still. And AR, one of the best places to look for AR hardware is right in your pocket or your bag to use your smartphone or tablet. We're going to talk about a couple of these in more detail, but the picture on the right you might be familiar with is, I think the name of the app is Skywatch. I'm blanking on it, sorry. But basically, you're standing in the middle of the field at night and you're trying to identify constellations. And I've gotten into fights with friends before, like, no, that's not Orion's belt, that is. And so then we all pull out our phones and we point our phone cameras up to the sky, and a combination of our current location, what the camera brings in, and what data it knows about the sky and where I'm pointing because of my gyroscope. It understands what I'm looking for and it can identify constellations for me. So very cool app, very fun. There's a few out there with similar names too, like Skywatch, yeah. But just an example of augmented reality in that it's taking the stars in the sky, layering on top different bits of information, and then giving you this additional information on your screen, right on your phone. Same with the that brick building that's translating. It looks like some Russian, maybe a Russian sign, using your smartphone, holding it up. That's probably using Google Translate. Which again, it takes in the reality of the foreign language sign, and then it almost instantly converts it into English just by holding up your smartphone camera. And then the bottom picture is IKEA furniture. IKEA has an app where you can hold, if you're looking for a piece of furniture and you don't want to commit, because that's a big commitment because you have to put it together yourself. But before you buy it, if you want to select which furniture you're looking at and then hold up your phone in front of the space where you want it, you can, like digitally or, superimpose that picture of your furniture into your space. So you'll see exactly what it would look like or decent what it would look like in that space. So just a few examples of augmented reality and how to use them using your smartphone. And we'll talk a bit more about this too. But before we do, I did just want to mention another thing that is kind of a little bit out there, but starting to be rumors and news reports now and then are what we call smart glasses. And this kind of goes back to the question about the Seinfeld goggles and the large clunky headsets, because this is really the future, at least for augmented reality, of a very slim, very streamlined experience of using, instead of having to hold up the camera on your smartphone, using lenses as a sort of camera and then superimposing graphics right in front of your eyes to see new information. And big players right now in that field, both Facebook and Apple have been rumored to be working on smart glasses. In fact, Facebook I think they had their earnings report yesterday, and I think Mark Zuckerberg said that they're not calling them smart glasses yet, or sorry, they're not calling them augmented reality glasses yet. They're still referring to them as smart glasses, and that they'll probably work more with audio first. So like, hey Siri or hey Alexa, like which way should I turn? Oops, my phone's listening to me. So that's sort of, a step in the AR direction. But again, because augmented reality is so complicated in execution, we have a long ways to go, but this is definitely something to keep an eye out for in the future. Facebook is working with Ray-Ban too. I found that little tidbit out yesterday. All right, so let's talk a bit about how augmented reality is used. I love this image because this is very much like a mechanic, a diagnostic tool. You can see this person has a tablet, and without having much knowledge, they can navigate through how to fix something or how to identify what's broken by holding up this tablet and walking through the different steps that it tells you. So really interesting way of, interacting with technology. Mechanics use them nowadays. There was a commercial in the last year about a Mercedes mechanic wearing smart glasses that essentially, like, as he was working on the engine, these glasses were like highlighting, like you see in this picture here, like highlighting certain parts green and red to, check this part and this part's okay. So navigational is a really big one. There's also Amazon warehouses where, you can just imagine Amazon, this behemoth of, shipping constantly, and these warehouses that are huge with hundreds of aisles that you have to go up and down and not get lost. And they have workers in some of their warehouses now wearing glasses, and they basically just type in the product that they need to grab from the shelf, and they follow a yellow line that leads them to the product that they're going to grab from the shelf. And then they'll follow the next line to the next product. So this is definitely being used in the manufacturing and industrial world. And it's exciting to see the progress that I'm sure is just around the corner too, for us as consumers. Another place it's being used, probably doesn't surprise you too much, is the defense industry. This is a picture of inside of an airplane, and it's, again, like it's got data and information directly on the windshield. So that person flying this plane doesn't really need to look around. It's giving them speed, it's giving them direction. It might be giving them, other aircrafts that may be nearby. All of that information can be right there without having to look away. Some high-end car manufacturers have started putting in this data as well, started adding in these, they're called heads-up displays, or HUD, H-U-D, heads-up display. So just something to be aware of. Like, I think Tesla, of course, was doing something like this, and maybe Mercedes, maybe one of the other car manufacturers as well. So I definitely see this as something that we should have in the very near future. Like, I'm just picturing when I drive somewhere new, I pull up Google Maps and I mount my phone on my dashboard, but I'm still kind of looking back and forth between the road and my phone, like where do I turn? But imagine that data just being, right on your windshield, but still something you can see through. And that's exactly where we're heading. Okay. I introduced it earlier, but Google Translate has this feature called Lens, where it uses your camera lens for a translation. And one of my favorite things to use when I travel, I used to travel quite a bit, and this was literally a lifesaver when trying to order off of a menu. In all different languages, it translates back and forth. So I'm just going to show you this little video to give you an idea about how this Google Translate Lens app works. So bear with me.
Okay, here we go. Testing. 1, 2. 1, 2. And flip it. No.
Down, up, down.
So you can see like this incredible app, and definitely check it out if you travel, or if you even want to try checking out like a foreign language book from the library and playing with the app that way too. It can be really fun. Oops. Okay, so that was Google Translate. Again, consumer technology.
Okay.
Another big way that you might see augmented reality for consumers is social media filters. I don't know about you, but if you might have noticed in the last like 5 years, I'll say that everybody all of a sudden looks way better in their pictures than they do in real life. And that is because of filters. Filters basically augment your what you look like. In fact, some of them are even called beautify filters. So they take your face and then they enhance it based on certain things that you might want enhanced. So I took some selfies and applied some filters just to give you an idea of other things out there. The one on the far left here is definitely got some sort of skin smoothing, mascara, adding, lipstick stuff. And then you can kind of see some different examples as we go through. Obviously, this little kitty, it can see where my nose is, and it gives me a little kitty nose, and it sees where like my kitty ears should be. And then over here on the right-hand side, I just liked this example to really drive home the point of giving eyelashes. So it's taking the reality, it's identifying where my eyes are, and then giving me the option here to select different length eyelashes that I'd like to add for this picture. So a very popular way that AR is currently being used, that you might already be using it yourself. So filters are augmented reality. Another way that AR is being used, you might have heard of Pokemon Go. So this has really kind of made AR blow up in the last few years, and this and filters, I'll say. So Pokemon Go is a game you can play with your smartphone. It's an app. And basically you hold up your phone, and as you hold up your phone and look through the camera, you see these little Pokemon creatures all about. And I took these pictures, or I had a coworker who plays the game take these pictures. And you'll see these pictures are actually at the Blake Library. So this is here in the lobby at Blake. This little Pokemon is standing on our makerspace counter with our Lego wall in the background. This guy is right towards the entrance of Blake Library. This is actually in the staff break room stealing our donuts, and this is outside on the sidewalk. So again, it's taking a physical reality and adding in extra information. So Brianna pointed out to me too that like it's actually really impressive that this Pokemon guy is standing on top of a table. So they even are understanding that there's some height and depth in this 2D picture that they add in this additional layer. So Pokemon Go, if you've never played it, ask someone under 30 maybe, and ask them if they've ever played it and to show you how to do it. So I don't play it personally, but Brianna, did you want to add in any comments or experience?
Yeah, I can turn on my camera real quick.
Sure.
And show kind of my example. Here we go. So usually
I'm going to stop sharing actually so that people can see a little bit bigger.
Sorry. There we go. All right. So usually when you turn on Pokemon Go, it looks kind of like this, where the Pokemon is imposed onto your like the image in your phone, but they're kind of just hovering there with the shadow underneath them. And sometimes that's convincing, but you can see Pikachu is really, really small on the table. And they recently added an update called AR Plus or Niantic AR, and that will adjust Pikachu so that it it automatically applies to the table. So you can kind of see his size is more exact to how he's supposed to be, and he's actually sitting on the table. Even as I move my camera around, he stays there and is on the hard surface, not just floating around in space with a shadow on him. So it is developing and trying to become more and more realistic, and it makes the game a lot more fun too. So I will.
And you try to catch them, right, Brianna?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
The goal of Pokemon is to collect them all.
Collect them all.
When you see a Pikachu, you throw a Pokeball at him, and you just kind of collect them for fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. Yeah. Can you still see my slide, or can you see my slides again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So yes, so augmented reality, very fascinating, very interesting thing to watch. And you can actually try it if you wanted to soon. There's one other thing that I wanted to tell you about ways you could try it. And that is by downloading an app called Quiver. And Quiver has what's called coloring pages on their website. So Quiver App, the company's called Quiver Vision. And basically it's like a picture and then you color it. And then you use your phone or tablet with this Quiver app on it to scan your picture, and it brings your picture to life. And I have a little video built in to show you what that looks like. I colored this bird. So I just was like a kid. I just printed out a coloring page and then colored it blue with green grass. And then this is a screenshot of my phone with the Quiver app open, and it brought that bird to life with my coloring, like my crayon strokes and my choice of color. So that's something super fun to do with kids if you want to impress them. And then there's also augmented reality tattoos as well that work very similarly. You can't color them. They're just like the fake tattoos that you might apply. And then there's a certain app that you hold up and scan it, and then on your phone, it looks like the tattoo kind of comes to life. So it might be like a shark that starts to swim, or a little kitty that, you pet and it shoots lasers at you. And so just something fun to, bring this home. Oops. Okay, so getting towards the end here. Those are just some examples, but what's the catch? And I'll just go ahead and say, don't forget to throw your questions into the chat because we'll stop shortly. But, you know, we all have smartphones these days. I mean, not 100% of people, but a lot of us have smartphones, which can be turned into an augmented reality device. It's not like VR where we have to spend thousands of dollars to really get an idea about how it works or how it would work well. But the problem with AR is that it's just so complex from a development side of things. The ability, like that's why the Google Translate is just so incredible, because basically when you hold up your phone to something in a foreign language and you say, I would like this translated into English, it has to take in what is currently being said, run it through a database of like a translation database, and then spit back what it actually is. And that's just a language. Now, if I'm walking around the Blake Library, you know, trying to catch Pokemon with whatever, you know, it really has to see, and it really has to be aware of where the shelves are and where the chairs are. And that is just very complex from a, like a technology side of things. So super exciting about the potential, but just very interesting in terms of what next. And once again, I'm going to bring up privacy, because when you use AR and you have to give it access to your camera, because then it can't see anything. And it will often ask you your location. Like I said, with the Constellation app, it needs to know where you are in the Earth, because if you're in the Northern Hemisphere or the Southern Hemisphere, it's going to make a difference. So with all of these advances in technology, we have plenty of evidence that has taught us that it's not the first thing companies think about when creating new things. It's usually an afterthought. And so just something to keep in mind as you start experimenting. The other thing I like to mention with AR is artificial intelligence. So we talked about Google Translate, and it gives those results, and it uses AI, but think about self-driving vehicles. Like if we have those if I am driving from the library to my house, and I type it in and I like tell my car to drive itself, it's gonna, you know, see where I'm going through through the camera built into my potential windshield. But I'm going to have to trust and rely that it won't fail, that it will actually see if another car comes to cut me off, that it will have the speed of processing to be able to understand and react accordingly. And I'm not saying it won't, there already are self-driving cars, but you know, kind of what are the future implications of giving up that sort of control? So definitely, super exciting. Can you tell this is something I love to think about and love to talk about? But yes, so that is kind of things to consider with AR. And then just to wrap it up here, you know, how we think it'll be used in the future. I kind of just touched on it. Gaming and entertainment, like we've discussed with Pokemon, and similar to along the lines of virtual reality. But then we have our self-driving vehicles, the heads-up display on the windshield, and then shopping. I kind of showed you the filters. If I was looking to try on makeup or clothes, there are apps out there that you can take a picture yourself or just hold up your phone in front of you and see what something might look like on your body or your face. And so definitely a space to watch. Did we have any questions come through since our last break?
Looks like we're all set.
Okay, we went a little over. I apologize for that. I do get excited about this topic, but just to kind of wrap up what we talked about today, we talked about understanding the similarities and differences of augmented reality and virtual reality. So there are some similarities. They often get lumped together, but as you can see, they're still very different technologies with very different purposes. And then we also touched on what these technologies might look like or what they look like today, and then what they might look like in the future. Usually at all of our virtual tech talks, I do like to mention that the library has other learning opportunities for you through a variety of outlets. One is classes like these, which you can sign up for, like you did for today. We also have a database called LinkedIn Learning. It used to be called lynda.com for anyone that has used that or heard that before, but they were acquired in the last year and they're now part of LinkedIn Learning. So your library card gives you access to that very rich database that has a lot of more complex tech topics than we tend to teach at the library. So if you want to learn Facebook marketing or how to code using a particular coding language, that's a great place to go for information. But we also have our tech time appointments, which I like to mention. Usually we can help you if you have a question about our ebook app, Libby, or just like general questions on your device. But sometimes you might be trying to do something and you have a really specific question or problem that's going to take a little bit more time to work through. And for those instances, we have our tech time appointments too. So that gives us an opportunity to plan to spend about 30 minutes with you in a one-on-one environment and really work through what you're trying to get at and where you're stuck and point you in the right direction. I like to tell people we're not the geek squad. We can't fix computers. But, as librarians, we're very good at finding relevant and reliable information. So if you want help with that, please let us know. And on that note, I will say thank you. Sign up for more of these classes. We are taking a little break in September. Oh, sorry. We have a couple of classes coming up in August. We have our digital information literacy class on August 6th. And on August 20th, we are going to be talking about 3D printing. So a couple different topics coming up in August before taking a break in September. And then we've got some exciting topics coming up for everyone for the rest of the year. So more to come on that. But if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, if you could take our survey and let us know. We're always looking to hear about more of what you want us to cover. So we do base our classes on what we think you should know, but also what you want to know. So I think, Brianna, could you throw that link into the chat? I'll email it out. Oh, awesome. I'll email it out to you also with the slides and everything in case you don't have time to take it today, because I know we're over. But feel free to take it now too. All right. And with that being said, I am going to say thank you so much for joining us today. And I am going to stop the recording.